At 8 p.m. on May 19, 2016. Ms. Li Jia, who lives in Dongying, Shandong Province, is holding her mobile phone and giggling. Li Jia is a single mother. Her daughter's name is Yao Jini. Studying in Beijing. Mother and daughter chat on WeChat almost every day. Same today. At this time, my daughter was acting coquettishly to Li Jia on WeChat and said, "Tomorrow will be 520. I want my mother to send me a big red envelope." Li Jia has always doted on her daughter. "I can't even stand this cute coquettishness." So she waved her hand. Transfer 2,000 yuan. This time is 8:48 in the evening. But I don't know what happened. After this transfer is sent, there was no movement from my daughter Yao Jini's side. No money was collected. No other messages were responded to. At the beginning, Li Jia thought her daughter might have gone to wash up. So she worked by herself, while waiting for a message from my daughter. But after waiting for more than an hour, Yao Jini still didn't reply. Li Jia was a little worried and made a phone call. But no one answered, which made Li Jia suddenly nervous. She waited another hour. At 10 o'clock in the evening, my daughter still didn't reply. This made Li Jia very worried, because she knew that her daughter had no class tonight. Even if I just went to wash up, it's time to come back then. So in desperation, Li Jia gave her daughter a school. New Oriental Foreign Language School in Chongping District, Beijing made a phone call. After asking and communicating, the school probably understands the situation. Immediately contacted the dormitory teacher of Yao Jini's dormitory. Soon the dormitory teacher gave a reply. He said that the dormitory teacher went to the dormitory and took a look inside. I discovered that Yao Jini was not in the dormitory at all. Her bed was empty. At this time, additional manpower is being deployed to search in the school. Hearing this news, Li Jia's heart skipped a beat. Because it was already past 11 o'clock at night. It's past 11 o'clock. But my daughter disappeared. This made her very, very worried. So Li Jia immediately went downstairs and drove to Beijing overnight. Along the way, she also kept calling the school and teachers. The teacher has been fully cooperating. At 0:42 in the morning, the teacher called suddenly. When I first started, I asked Li Jia a question. Asked if her daughter Yao Jini was in love. Li Jia was stunned at that time. I feel a little confused inside. Why does the teacher ask this? Then the teacher replied. Just now, a male classmate named Wang Yizha sent him a text message. He said that he was with Yao Jini. Yao Jini's cell phone is out of battery. The two of them are charging their mobile phones in the hotel now. Tell the teacher not to worry. It was precisely because the teacher received this text message. That's why he asked Yao Jini if he was in love. Otherwise, how is it possible to open a room outside? After hearing the name Wang Yizha, Li Jia suddenly remembered that her daughter had indeed mentioned this boy before. At that time, my daughter said that Wang Yizha seemed to be interested in her. Always entangled. Later, she found that she couldn't catch up. He spread rumors that Yao Jini stole someone else's boyfriend, wanting others to isolate her. These things made Yao Jini tortured. It was indeed greatly affected. So Yao Jini wanted to transfer to another school at that time. But her mother, Li Jia, suggested that she consider transferring to another school after finishing this semester. So even though there is news about having a daughter now, but Li Jia was even more worried. Because she was very worried about this boy. I also don't understand why my daughter, who has always been well behaved, would go out and book a room with someone. This is unbelievable. To find out what happened, Li Jia stepped on the accelerator. And I kept calling the school to ask questions along the way. But the school keeps looking and looking. But there has been no progress. It was impossible to give Li Jia an accurate answer. Until 5 o'clock in the morning. Principal Wang from the school called Li Jia back. He said that the school was contacting the relevant teachers in charge. The specific situation has not yet been determined. Another hour passed after that. At about 6 o'clock in the morning, the school called again. The news this time is mixed. The good news is, Yao Jini found it. But the bad news is that her body was found. Yao Jini is dead. After getting this news, Li Jia was struck like 5 thunders. She was paralyzed. I can't even hold the steering wheel. She couldn't believe it. I was still messaging myself on WeChat a few hours ago. My daughter who is still acting coquettishly. Now he is completely separated from himself. What happened to my daughter? Suddenly I received the bad news of my daughter's death. At this time, Li Jie could be said to be relying entirely on a mother's instinct to insist on driving to Beijing. But because there was too much traffic jam on the road. Until noon. She just rushed to her daughter's school. This school was established in 2010. It is a full-time international bilingual school built by New Oriental Education Technology Group. It can be seen that it is a good school. Li Jie divorced in his early years. While she was doing business. While raising her daughter. Yao Jini is also a slim figure. In order to allow her to go abroad when she grows up. Broaden your horizons. Have a better future. Li Jie did not hesitate to spend nearly 300,000 yuan a year. She was sent from her hometown in Shandong to this bilingual school in Beijing to study. But I never expected that. The passing of my daughter turned out to be a permanent farewell. After arriving at school, Li Jie was taken to the scene where her daughter's body was found. Just a few hours ago. It's around 6 o'clock in the morning. A few classmates went to the classroom for morning self-study. When these students passed classroom 601 on the 6th floor, I found that there seemed to be someone in number 601 looking through the classroom glass. There is a person lying on top of the desk. Facing north. Feet facing south. The head is still covered with school uniform. At first everyone thought the man might be sleeping. And asked everyone else to keep their voices down. Don't disturb others. But then a classmate took a closer look. I found that there seemed to be blood under this man's body. And he was very strangely motionless. It seemed as if there wasn't even the ups and downs of breathing. So the classmate immediately reported the situation to the teacher. At that time, the door of classroom 601 was closed, and the students could not enter. After the teacher arrived, he found the key, opened the door and walked in, wanting to check what was going on with the student. But as soon as I touched the student's body, I found that it was already cold and he was no longer breathing. This shocked everyone and quickly reported the incident. 20 minutes later, the police arrived at the scene and confirmed that the deceased was Yao Jini, who disappeared last night. It was not until around 7 o'clock that night that Li Jie saw the body of his daughter Yao Jini at the Forensic Identification Center. I saw that my daughter was still wearing her school uniform, her face was swollen, her nose was bleeding profusely, her head was bruised, there were obvious signs of being pinched or strangled on her neck, and there was blood all over her buttocks. The preliminary forensic examination concluded that Yao Jini should have been strangled to death. At the same time, Li Jie got another bad news. The on-site classroom 601 was originally an office prepared by the school for teachers, but was temporarily converted into a classroom, so this classroom is the only one in the whole school. Classrooms without surveillance. Moreover, the entrance of classroom 601 happens to be in the blind spot of surveillance, and the surveillance in the corridor cannot take pictures here at all. So it is impossible to know what happened in this classroom. At the same time, this situation also means that the murderer of Yao Jini must be very familiar with the situation at the scene. He knew that this place had no surveillance and was very suitable for committing crimes. During the police inquiry, they also discovered another strange detail. Shortly after the incident last night, when the dormitory teacher was doing rounds, someone once told him that Yao Jini had finished his evening self-study. Went to classroom 601. So the dormitory teacher went to classroom 601 to search, but found that the door of classroom 601 was locked and did not go in. This situation is also very strange. The body was obviously found in 601. Why did the dormitory teacher say that the door was locked at that time? Is what the dormitory teacher told the truth? Who is lying? In fact, judging from the current situation, the male classmate named Wang Yizha is undoubtedly a serious suspect. The text message he sent to the school teacher last night said that he and Yao Jini went to check out a room, and this morning Yao Jini's body was found. These things are connected together, and there is no doubt that he has a problem. And after police investigation, it was discovered that Wang Yizha was also missing. So there must be something wrong here. The police first found the teacher who received Wang Yizha's text message last night. The teacher recalled that he suddenly received the text message while looking for Yao Jini last night. After receiving the text message, he immediately wrote back to Wang Yizha and asked Wang Yizha to hand over his mobile phone to Yao Jini, and asked Yao Jini to call or send a voice message to confirm his safety. But there was no reply from Wang Yizha, so the teacher had no choice but to try to contact Wang Yizha's parents, but was unable to do so. Later, I asked other students, but after asking around, no one knew where they went to rent a room. Fortunately, the police later screened all the surveillance cameras in the school and finally discovered Wang Asia. It turned out that he climbed over the wall and ran out of the school in the early morning, which explained why he disappeared after the incident, and also further strengthened his suspicion of committing the crime. In view of this, the police decided to arrest Wang Asia. But just when the police were about to arrest someone, the police station suddenly received a call to surrender. A man called and said he wanted to surrender. Why? Because he committed manslaughter. This man is Wang Asia. Soon, an hour later, Wang Asia's mother LV brought Wang Asia to the police station. Later, through Wang Asia's confession, the police finally figured out what happened. Wang Asia did go to find a room, but in fact he went to find it by himself. Because he was afraid, he escaped from the school after committing the crime, opened a room by himself, and hid. After surrendering, he handed over his mobile phone, but all the communication records in it were deleted by him. He thought that would be fine, but in fact the police were able to restore it. Later, the police used technical means to recover the data on his mobile phone and found that he had contacted his mother many times after committing the crime. It was under his mother's persuasion that Liu finally decided to surrender. First, let's briefly talk about Wang Asia's background. To put it simply, he is a second-generation rich man, born in 1999, 1.8 meters tall and quite energetic. In the early years, my parents made a fortune by opening a foot-washing city, and my mother was the owner of a trading company. Later, Wang Asia's father was sentenced to jail because of business problems. Because his mother was busy with work every day, Wang Asia lived in school since he was in middle school and rarely communicated with his parents. So this kid is rich, but at the same time lacks discipline. He is actually from the same school as those playboys. However, although his family is rich, Wang Asia is actually not particularly public in school and has always been very low-key on the surface. But in private, he actually had a lot of fun. He had a WeChat group with a few classmates who were good at it, which was full of all kinds of dirty words, and even illegal remarks such as soliciting prostitution. To put it bluntly, he is a sultry type, because he disguises himself very well and looks like a handsome boy, so many girls in the school like him. 6 months before the incident, at a party held by the school, Yao Jini performed a dance on stage, which successfully attracted Wang Asia's attention. Later, Wang Asia tried his best to get Yao Jini's WeChat account and confess to him, but he was rejected. This incident made Wang Asia feel very humiliated, so he became angry and threatened to make Yao Jini pay the price. From this, the police speculated that Yao Jini's murder might be Wang Asia's revenge. However, after Wang Asia arrived at the case, although he took the initiative to admit that he had dated Yao Jini, but as for what happened last night, he gave a contrary statement. The police conducted multiple interviews. Wang Asia explained. That night he made an appointment with Yao Jini to have sex in classroom 601. It was Yao Jini who took the initiative to do this. But when it was time to start in the classroom, he regretted it. At that time, Yao Jini said that he wanted to tell the teacher about this, saying he raped himself. Wang Asia panicked when he heard this. He thought Yao Jini was playing tricks on him and framed him. So the two started to quarrel. During this period, the two started to fight. Then Wang Asia accidentally choked him and fainted. After Yao Jini, he ran away because he was afraid. He never thought that Yao Jini would die from this. This is Wang Asia's own statement. But is this really the case? I'm afraid it's hard to say. Let's take a look at some interesting details after the incident. In fact, after Li Jie just learned about his daughter's death. At about 7 o'clock that morning, Wang Asia's mother, Liu, asked Li Jie through the school. Asked him, can this matter be solved with money? At that time, Li Jie was on his way to Beijing. My daughter is dead. He was already very angry. Now I get another statement like this. He immediately refused. However, I didn't expect that. Later in school, Li Jie encountered something even more bizarre. Sometime after the incident, Li Jie went to school to retrieve his daughter's belongings. These relics have been stored in the school. But after he came to the dormitory where his daughter lived, I found that many things were lost, including my daughter's ID card, laptop, jewelry, etc. All missing. Moreover, the police seal on the dormitory door was also missing. Instead, the school handwritten a seal and affixed it to it. Looks very amateurish. Very irregular. Li Jie went to the school to ask for an explanation. But the school said it was unaware of this. Li Jie asked to check the dormitory surveillance system. Find out who stole my daughter's belongings. But was rejected. In desperation, he had no choice but to approach the police again for help. The police conducted an investigation into this. The final statement is, Yao Jini's relics may have been left during the renovation of the dormitory in July 2017. It was stolen by a decoration worker. But who exactly? Neither the school nor the police know. In this case, public opinion online is overwhelmingly condemning the school. Some people also think that the police handled the case poorly. But this place? In fact, there is a time detail that everyone needs to pay attention to. Yao Jini was murdered in May 2016. It is said here that the relics were stolen by decoration workers in July 2017. What does this mean? Explain that when Li Jie went to find his daughter's belongings. It is already more than a year after the incident. It was indeed a long time to find this information after more than a year. We don't know who is responsible for this. So what about this matter? In fact, objectively speaking, it is difficult to make a fair and objective evaluation. Back to the case itself. Through technical means, the police. The communication records between Wang Asia and Yao Jini have been restored as much as possible. Combined with other clues, also got more and more amazing details. First, there are actually two doors in classroom 601 where the crime occurred, a front door and a back door. In general, the front door is always open. Only the back door will be locked. Secondly, I just mentioned earlier that the dormitory teacher came to classroom 601 to look for Yao Jini that night. But when I arrived, I found that the door to 601 was locked. It was around 10 o'clock in the evening. Before that, when the security guard patrolled at 9 o'clock that night, he also found that 601 was locked. So this means that the time of the crime was before 9 o'clock. Combined with surveillance videos from other places in the school, the police did see Yao Jini going to this teaching building alone. So there is a new question here. Notice. What the police saw was Yao Jini going to this teaching building alone. Why did he come here by himself? Where did Wang Asia go? After committing the crime, Wang Asia took away Yao Jini's mobile phone. And also deleted all the chat history with Yao Jini from his mobile phone. These records were later restored by the police. Then I found an important clue inside. At 8:40 on the night of the incident, one of Yao Jini's roommates asked Lu Zilin to call him and said, 9 o'clock in the evening. Members of the student union need to go to 601 for a meeting. Let Yao Jini not forget. It was precisely because of this that Yao Jinikai went to 601 alone. But the actual situation is, that night, the student union did not hold a meeting. So why did Lu Zilin lie to Yao Jini? What is the relationship between Lu Zilin and Wang Asia? Are there any other hidden circumstances behind this? Except for this Lu Zilin, there is another important person in this case. Wang Asia's friend Lu Yuza died between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning on the second day after the incident. Wang Asia told Lu Yuza about his murder of Yao Jini. After Lu Yuza learned about it, not only helped him hide it, and also helped him delete it from his other mobile phone. All records related to Yao Jini from April to the time of the incident. Judging from Lu Yuza's behavior, some people commented that he looked like a bitch. However, follow-up investigation did find that. What about the relationship between these two people? It's indeed similar to this situation. Later, the police approached Lu Yuza to learn about the situation. He also admitted that he helped delete the records at that time. But he said he had no other ideas. Just because after learning that Wang Asia killed someone. So scared. So I did this for him in a daze. At the same time, the police also discovered that the relationship between Lu Zilin and Wang Asia I just mentioned is very good. So, Lu Zilin's lie to Yao Jini was explained. It was probably Wang Asia who instigated him to do this. But Lu Zilin's idea is also relatively simple. After all, he is also a child. He didn't expect things to develop like this. So he agreed at that time. And here is the most regrettable thing about this matter. Even if Lu Zilin and Lu Yuza were simply helping Wang Asia, it was difficult to punish them on this basis at the time. Because there is no evidence that they knew in advance that Wang Asia was going to rape and kill. In more academic terms, they did not have the intention to commit a crime, nor did they have the intention to provide assistance to the crime. Unless there is corresponding evidence to prove it. Of course, for Lu Zilin, there are some other details worth thinking about. After the incident, Lu Zilin did not go to school for more than 10 days and refused to cooperate with the police investigation on the grounds of being frightened. It was difficult for the police to investigate him. It is actually difficult to say whether he knew about Wang Aisia's plan and how much he was involved in this case. It is also difficult for the police to find out. In addition to these two people, there are also difficulties in identifying the criminal Wang Aisia. Judging from what is known so far, the deceased Yao Jiani had a blood stain on his lower body when he was found, and Wang Aisia's confession also mentioned that the two parties had sexual relations. So, did Wang Aisia commit rape? From the perspective of evidence alone, it is indeed difficult to say at first. Wang Aisia said that the relationship was voluntary, but he could not provide any evidence. Obviously, Wang Aisia has been working hard to characterize this case as negligent death. Because compared with intentional homicide or rape, causing death by negligence is definitely relatively minor. However, the police certainly don't believe this situation. What is the truth? For a long time after that, Li Jie put down his family business and hired various expert lawyers to run around. After more than a year, he was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye, but it paid off in the end. The Hubei Tongji Forensic Medicine Judicial Identification Center and the Southwest University of Political Science and Law Forensic Identification Center conducted supplementary forensic identification on Yao Jiani, confirming that Yao Jiani had multiple injuries from blows, including tears and bleeding in the perineum and anus, as well as tears in the hymen. There must have been sex. However, the sexual intercourse was not voluntary. Both institutions ultimately believed that the laceration to the lower body should have been caused by a large external force. To put it bluntly, it was most likely rape. With this strong evidence, the Beijing Municipal People's Procuratorate also immediately cooperated with the action. With the joint efforts of all parties, this case finally ushered in a major turning point. 1 year after the incident, in June 2017, the Beijing No. 1 Intermediate Court opened a trial on the case. In the juvenile court, Wang Aisia was well-dressed and had a very exquisite hairstyle. He looked like a star. There was no trace of fear on his face. His view was the same as before, he still believed that he was negligent in causing death. But 1 year later, the situation is actually very clear now. The police recovered all the communication records of Yao Jiani and Wang Aisia and found that they had never dated at all and there was no relationship between boyfriend and girlfriend. At the same time, it can be seen that Yao Jiani is quite disgusted with Wang Aisia, so he is even less likely to take the initiative to have a relationship. Moreover, the location of classroom 601 where the crime occurred is relatively remote, at the very back of the corridor, and few people usually go there. Even if you think Yao Jiani really wants to take the initiative to have a relationship, there is no reason to choose this place. What's more, there is also the most critical piece of evidence, which is the supplementary forensic identification made for Yao Jiani by the two forensic identification centers just mentioned, which proves that Yao Jiani was sexually assaulted. Finally, on June 26, 2017, the Beijing No. 1 Intermediate People's Court made a judgment, holding that Wang Aisia used violent means to forcefully have sex with women against their will, which constituted the crime of rape, and intentionally deprived others of their lives, which constituted intentional for the crime of murder. It was decided to carry out life imprisonment and be deprived of political rights for life. For Wang Aisia, life imprisonment can be said to be the most severe sentence. Why do you say that? Because generally speaking, intentional homicide is punishable by the death penalty. The reason why he was sentenced to life, that is to say, a full sentence, was because he was not yet 18 years old when he committed the crime. According to the law, those who were under the age of 18 at the time of the crime cannot be sentenced to death. It can be said that this is the biggest discount the law has given Wang Aisia. However, he was still not satisfied and insisted on filing an appeal, believing that the facts were unclear and the evidence was insufficient. Then came all kinds of difficult evidence and running around. Later, the second trial of this case began on February 8, 2018, and the outcome was actually no doubt. The Beijing High Court ultimately rejected the appeal and upheld the original verdict. Wang Aisia was still sentenced to life imprisonment and deprived of political rights for life. At this point, the case is finally settled. After the criminal verdict was issued, there was a civil part of the case, and the court finally made a determination. Wang Aisia and his mother Lu have to bear 90% of the responsibility, and the school bears 10% of the responsibility. They want to compensate Li Jie 1.4 million. After this case occurred, it caused a violent shock across the country, just like the incident where a junior high school student in Handan killed a classmate that happened some time ago. Every time a minor commits an illegal crime, it will make people feel extremely angry and extremely confused. The Procuratorate once asked relevant units to evaluate Wang Asia and found that the reason why Wang Asia became like this was simply because he lacked correct guidance from his parents. He had very little communication with his parents since he was a child. He has been boarding at school since middle school and has lived outside for many years. This has left Wang Asia in a lonely state physically and mentally. In fact, many parents feel that they should provide a good educational environment for their children from an early age. Many children are sent to some so-called good schools in other places from junior high school. These schools may indeed be good, and indeed a good thing for children, but at the same time, parents are also deprived of the opportunity to communicate with their children. Such an environment may lead to Wang Asia's situation. Lack of parental presence. It is an important reason for Wang Asia's various problems in adolescence. Wang Asia cannot handle the relationship with his female classmates well. He will think that the relationship between men and women is either strangers who have never met each other, or it's a relationship between boyfriend and girlfriend. It can be seen that his idea is extreme. His three views are very problematic. Lack of family supervision. Lack of corresponding social communication skills. Encountered a problem. Unable to adopt proper methods to deal with it. This is also the core content present in most juvenile crime cases. In the final analysis, to put it bluntly, it's still with my parents. Besides, on the side of the victim, on Qingming Festival 3 years after he was killed, Yao Jini's body was finally cremated. Li Jie never got over his sadness. In the past few years, Li Jie not only lost his beloved daughter, even his own parents died of illness. From then on, he lives alone in this world. Later, Li Jie opened Weibo for his daughter online, published many relevant articles and insights, and expressed his willingness to help parents who have the same experience free of charge. In his view, when children lose the opportunity to defend themselves, parents, as their closest relatives, we must seek justice for their misfortune. At the same time, he has also been calling on the legislature, the education department and all sectors of society are concerned about school violence. Strive to create a more harmonious environment for children. Safer, happy environment.